Welcome back. South Africa is held largely in sub-investment grade by major credit rating agencies. Its placement means that government's ability to pay back debt is seen as more questionable than those countries in investment grade. Now, a weaker grading can result in higher borrowing costs for South Africa. Last week, Moody's changed its outlook from negative to stable, citing a few improvements. Now, I want to bring in Lucie Villa, Vice President and Senior Credit Officer covering South Africa at Moody's. Lucie, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. So tell us why your outlook changed to stable. Something in South Africa's economy is not worsening as you see it. What is it?
Sure, thank you. So actually, we would need more to look at the finances of the government to really understand why we have changed the outlook from negative to stable. And so what we're seeing now is that if we look at the government debt burden going forward, we believe for the first time in several years now that for once, it's likely that the debt burden will stop rising. And that is due to the fact that the fiscal position of the government, which is the difference between the revenue it collects and the spending it does, including paying for debt, the borrowing cost as well, because this fiscal position will improve at a faster pace than we had anticipated, that the government admittedly also anticipated, and sufficiently enough, again, to stabilize the government debt burden going forward. That's really the key driver beyond our change in outlook.
Now, a ratings agency such as Moody's would be interested in a few things, but presumably one of the most important things on that list would be evidence to show that the South African economy is growing, or any economy is growing sustainably, and that's when perhaps you can consider moving the grade upwards. Are you seeing that sustainable growth potential in South Africa at the moment?
So what we're seeing is a low growth potential at the moment. And I think the constraints on the economic growth are very well known in South Africa, very well known by policy makers and deciders. They have been at the center of policy agenda over the last years, but they remain still, very predominant. And for that reason, we project growth to be at 1.5% going forward, with actually some downside risks in the near term, i.e., meaning that growth could be even lower. Maybe if I can cite the two key constraints, one is electricity, unreliable electricity provision, and the second is the labor market with very high unemployment rate, as I'm sure South Africans know. That we project that it's unlikely to change for the foreseeable future. Still, growth would be in the positive territory, but the subdued one, probably, in particular, when we consider the potential that is available in the country.
And that's a pity, because ratings agencies like Moody's would look at reliable electricity, given the fact that investors who put up factories would want to know that their conveyor belts can turn. And I think I heard in your seminar not so long ago that that's where confidence and sentiment really comes in from the business community. And that's the big barrier there, isn't it?
It is. Of course, directly the fact that there is such a difficulty in getting electricity is weighing on growth in the first place. But as you said, there is an indirect effect that is difficult to quantify, even though many observers, including the IMF, has made some quantification of the impact. But indirect impact is on business confidence. And that also is, I think, an important factor. But conversely, and you can look at it more constructively, it means that we started to see just the premises and the beginning of an improvement. Then we could expect actually the sentiment to start improving, before actually, electricity provision is up to the level of the demand and there is no gap in the economy.
I also heard you, this is my final question to you, in that seminar talk about the fact that we've made some gains on keeping our wage bill in order to some extent. We're keeping that down, taming it somewhat. It hasn't happened in the past, but I think of late, government seems to be getting that right. Is that a very significant positive step on government's front?
It is. There is the symbolic of it. I think we need to be clear about it because, as you alluded to, there have been many years during which the wage bill, so the compensation to employees paid out of the budget, has been growing faster than inflation and sometimes faster than GDP itself. And that has meant less and less flexibility in the budget to spend on other policy priorities. So the fact that for the first year we see this wage bill, this spending item, really slowing is a good sign. Of course, then the question is for how long in future can the government hold that direction, and whether in fiscal 2022, 2023 it will be able to continue maintain that cap. We believe that it is likely to continue to do so, and that's what we project under our, I would say, baseline expectation. Of course, there's always risks that this spending item increases a bit faster than what we expect, but we think that the government is well positioned to continue keeping the growth at least below the level of inflation.
Even then, it would be some time before we actually get investment grade, I would imagine.
That's a question. In terms of the timing, we can't really give a timing, of course, but we've been very clear, I think, in terms of what are the steps to go back up in the rating scale. And clearly, the next step is more looking back at, again, the economic growth, what we discussed before. I think it's fair to say that for government, any government, there is a limit to how much fiscal consolidation you can achieve if the economy is not growing. Because if the economy starts to grow more rapidly, then you will get more tax revenue, you will have less spending pressure, and then you can imagine, a fiscal position even much stronger than what we forecast at the moment. So I think now what we're looking at is more, to what would happen on the economy, the constraints that I mentioned, and we will try to see at which point we started to see premises of improvement. And of course, as this improvement take place, and they would be, I think, gradual by nature, then as they go along, we can take a view on what is the right rating positioning and the extent to which we can upgrade the rating.